All right. So today we're gonna do offset a little bit. We're instead of moving straight onto the texturing, we're gonna talk about this sword prop, and building props. Um, just because it was asked before that I talk about it. It's not gonna be too different from stuff that we do, so this is kind of like an extra thing. And I wouldn't worry too much about the contents, but I will go over this and kind of give my thoughts, right? So if I have a design, there's different things that are going to happen here, because like I have a design, and a lot of this, in this case, the sword is very occluded by the character. Now, obviously, if I designed it myself, in this case, I can just go and design stuff. And I'll do the same thing if I take a design from online and I'm just kind of like practicing. However, if I'm in a studio, obviously you're going to want to have that stuff clarified, right? You're going to go in and ask like, hey, what happens in this area that's hidden, right? I'm going to say that it's going to have like some sort of symbols on it, but that is something that you'll have to consider. So the next thing that I would do is I would take the sword, and I'm just going to copy it, and we're going to throw it into a new document. Grundurian, hey, how are you doing? No, I'm doing some prop development. So this is just from the design that I was doing earlier, and I'm just talking about like making this prop. We were doing a little bit of drawing earlier before stream, and I'll probably do some after this workshop stuff is done. But for now, I'm just going to quickly talk about making a prop. And again, this one should be fairly quick, because there isn't a ton that we need to be doing for this. Right? So we're going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it in here. I'm going to move my tablet up, because I'm going to be switching to Maya fairly shortly. Okay, so the reason I have two copies of the character here is for scale, right? So I can see now that I've rotated. What I do mainly is I'm essentially creating an image plane to be used in Maya, right? So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a new layer, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to use the ruler tool for symmetry. I'm in clip right now. There's other tools that have symmetry. I just find it very helpful. If when I used to use Photoshop, I just used the ruler, the guide tool to get the center point of the image. I would line up the prop as best I could, and then I'd trace one side and then mirror it over. But because I now have symmetry available to me, I will be using the symmetry tools. All right, so you can see here that one. First of all, I have to center off the. Where's the thing? I got to go to object mode, select our curve here, and make sure that it's centered up. I know that my image is 4,000 by 4,000, so if I set this to 2,000 by 2,000, it'll be in the center. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide this temporarily. I'm going to make sure that this shows up on all layers, show in all layers. So that way I can line this up, make sure that it's straightened out. Right? Right, cool. So now I have that relatively in place. It's not perfectly symmetrical. I'll make it symmetrical because it was meant to be, but something to keep in mind. I'll also reduce the opacity on that, because it's distracting if it's fully opaque. How many hours do you play, work, practice, exercise 3D a day? 3D specifically? That varies a lot, right? Because some days it depends on what I'm working on. But I'd say I would probably do, I don't know, 12 to 14 hours a day. Except on weekends. Weekends are a little bit different, but during the week, yeah. Some weekends I do about the same. Depends. Depends on what I have to do. Since I started doing this workshop thing, it's been a lot more because I have to put in a lot of time to keep up with the each week. I think I was last week I was crunching pretty hard, to be honest. But we're in a pretty good place. Hey Saul, do you use Unreal Engine? I do at work, but normally I use Unity, or at least for my own stuff I use Unity. So you can see here that I'm kind of like establishing the shape of the weapon here, just by using the silhouette of the concept. That way I can get as close as possible to looking correct. This will just take a little bit, and then we'll go on to Maya. I keep this fairly rough. I'm not particularly worried about this looking good. It's mainly just so that I know what the shapes are. I'm gonna exaggerate a few things. If I was using someone else's concept, I wouldn't do this, but because it's my own, I know that I wanted this to be a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna make it a little bit thicker. These guys, I'm gonna just put. Oops, I don't want symmetry for that. I'll do that after. And then I know that there's going to be some sort of design here. I'm going to like just make up some runes. If it was a bigger project, you would obviously have some sort of symbology that is used throughout your project. Like, so if it's like a game or a story, you'd have some sort of like reasoning for these patterns. But because I don't have that in this case, I'm just making something that looks interesting. But it is something to keep in mind. It's something I want to bring up, right? So that you're not just like putting random patterns on things. It's important to establish a language, right? And maybe it is like a physical language, but it could also just be a pattern that's recurring. So in the case of this character, this particular prop is something that they found in some sort of like adventure that they were on. They went into some ruins and they found this cool sword, and they're like, "Hey, I want it." So they took it. And if that kind of thing existed, or if I had like a bigger narrative around that, I would have to consider what kind of patterning that the ruins would have. Like, were those ruins of some past culture, and then what kind of designs did that culture use? Did they have a language? Maybe it was a language that they used, and they had like some sort of maybe it was like some sort of spell or magic or something, like some sort of hymn written on the blade or something. So there's a lot of things that you can consider when you're thinking of like little patterns and designs that you're putting on your props. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm just going to I'm going to just go on a new layer to do the asymmetrical stuff. Wait a minute. Hold on. I made this appear on every layer when I just want it to be on the same layer. Not folder. There we go. Cool. But we're just going to now add a little. This is going to have like a little wrap on it or something, right? And maybe like a little knot. And then we have our little end bits of the cloth. And there we go. We have the sword. Right. Not too hard, right? Yeah. Okay, and we have the character. So the sword is about the same height as the character, a little taller, in fact, and that's pretty handy to know. So what I'm going to do Now that I know this anyway, I don't need that. I can hide this, right? All I need is this image. I'm going to save this. I have to hide my screen though for a second. Display capture. Okay. I just have to hide my screen for a second so that I don't open work stuff while I'm saving this. Okay, so we're gonna go save as. Okay. All right, and then we're gonna export it as a PNG or JPEG. Doesn't really matter. Export as a JPEG. Okay. Minimize it. Open up Maya, and this should be fine now. Okay. We'll show our screen again. So we're in Maya. This is the low poly of the character. I normally do props after the character is done for that reason, where like I have scale and reference and stuff. So good time to do that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into 4View, open up the prop reference, sword. Okay, we're going to hit 6. We're going to save just in case as well. All right, so we're going to hide the wireframe. I'm actually going to, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have gone to 6 mode. I'm going to go to 4. It's easier to see. We know that this is about, with the hair ponytail at the back, it's about the same height as the character. So actually I'm going to pull this back. I never liked that it shows the camera object whenever you add an image plane, but there you have it. I'm also going to put this to the side just so that I can see what it is, and then I'll censor it back out after. But it should be about yay big. I think that's about the right size. Okay. Awesome. So we have that now. I'm going to hide the player. Right. And now we're going to get in there and we're going to start modeling this out. And this is obviously a very simple shape, so it's not going to be too challenging. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is get this hilt in. So this is going to have top here. Sorry about the noise outside. I want to have like a good number around. Keep in mind that when I'm building this prop, I'm probably going to use this as the low poly object. So creating too many revolves around will end up with something that's too dense at the end. So that's just something that I keep in mind there. I'm just going to center this out here. And before I add any like supporting edges or details, I just block everything out with these very simple primitives. It's just more efficient that way. We'll be getting into Zbrush as well after this. The only thing is, because it's a hard surface object, I start here. Punished Homers, now following. Thank you for following. Welcome in. Okay. All right. And I'm deciding as I go like what I want to keep as separate pieces. I'm probably going to keep these separate because it's just a pain in the butt to merge them. They're also different materials, so it doesn't really make sense to combine them anyway. But it is something that I keep in mind. I usually like to keep, you know, if I'm creating like a prop that's to be held, you're usually going to want to, if you're going to want to keep this the same width. If say like the character is going to like change equipment or something, because then you can just have one animation. You can just swap out the tool, and it'll always fit in the hand. So that's something to keep in mind too when you're creating like a hilt or something. Is if you have a standard and you want to make sure that you're using the correct radius. I usually try to keep the hilt at a really clean number because then it's easier to reuse that number elsewhere. I'm thinking that this, because this is like a wrap, I'm going to keep this as a separate piece. This is all going to be kind of like this gold metal piece, and I think that is going to be one piece because of just because of the nature of it. I imagine if it was fabricated, it would have been fabricated as a single chunk. Okay, so that means that I'm going to have enough edges around this in order to support that structure. So I'm probably going to give this around 16. That is not the right category. It's here. Yeah. There we go. We're going to rotate X 90 degrees. Okay. And we'll once again center this out. Wonderful. I think that 16 should do it. Maybe it won't, but it should. We'll see. We'll see. Just in case, I like to create a duplicate of geometry like this. If I need to go back, I can, and I don't have to recreate and reposition the thing. So I'll just create a duplicate, and then I hide the original, just for my own sanity, I guess. And we're going to then, I think that, yeah, eventually I'm going to just mirror this, but for now we're going to treat this separately. It has symmetry mode on, but I'll turn it off because we're just working on everything that we're going to be doing is scaling from the center, so I don't want to have symmetry on for this particular portion. But we'll turn it back on once we start doing the wings on the sides. No, I forget the proper term for that part of the weapon. I guess it's the guard or something. Okay. Scale that inward. I have a little bit of a embossment. Hey Nate, Insta-lurk, enjoy your lurk. But saying hey. Appreciate you coming by, my friend. Okay. There. I'm gonna duplicate this again because, you know, paranoia. And what we're going to do here is now we're going to create this secondary piece that protrudes out, right? So I think I'm going to cut it here. Yeah. You make prop design seem like a smooth, easy process. It doesn't have, like, it depends on what you're making. I suppose it shouldn't be terribly hard either way. Yeah, this is a fairly simple design. Like, it's pretty simple. So it is a lot easier to do. You can have a variety of complexities, obviously, and that is something to be considered as well. This part I might screw up, but that's okay. So this is when I'm starting to make something. Like, everything so far has been like super simple, symmetrical shapes, right? And cylindrical shapes. Sorry, not symmetrical shapes. So it's very easy to just pop in a cylinder and be done. But it's not always that way. I also messed up here. Let's put on edges. There we go. And we're just going to extrude these out and yank them down. There we go. I think that'll look. You know what? That actually looks pretty good. Lucky me. Then we're just going to make sure that it is fitting the silhouette that I want. There we go. The only thing I'm not liking is that the bottom is... Do I not like that? I don't know. I don't think I'm a big fan of the bottom being concave. So what I'm going to do is just pull it out a little bit. Right. I'm going to make sure that this end is going to be a little bit tricky, but I'm just going to get it pretty close to how I want it to be. And that'll do. Right? Yeah. This side is a little bit wider than my original sketch, but I actually kind of like that because now it has more of a read. I'm going to pull this down a little bit. Cool. And another thing I'm considering as well is kind of widening this guard out a little bit and making this front part a little bit flatter, perhaps. So I'm going to duplicate and hide this again. I suppose what I could have done was extruded a little bit further in, but then I wouldn't have had this wider surface area that I wanted. That is also a consideration. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go to side view. And we're going to go into symmetry in the z-axis. And we're just going to, oops, y-axis. The object is rotated, so it's not actually the world Z, it's the object Z. I'm just going to pull this out and flatten it a little bit. That way it kind of has the same radius, but you get this kind of like flatter disc in the front. And you get a kind of wider guard. The reason I do that is just so that I have enough room for the blade. I feel like that fits the design a little bit better. Do you try to make it like a real sword, minding all the small details of a pommel, hilt, crossguard, blade, or do you just go for the design? In this case, I'm just going for the design. It depends on what your goals are, right? If you want to do something more realistic, then of course you're gonna want to do all that stuff. But if it reads like a sword and if it's aesthetically appealing, then it's hitting the marks that I'm going for right now. But yes, if you wanted to have like a more realistic thing, then yeah, sure, you'd want to like make sure it has all the things that you want, or that a sword would have. Obviously, this is not a realistic sword. It's a overly heavy, huge thing, the tiny hilt, and no one would be able to lift this. So yeah, it depends on what your goals are. But yeah, my target is just to make something that's like fun and aesthetically appealing, aesthetically pleasing. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is figure out how I want to build the blade. Blade, I usually just do like a big box, right? Also keep in mind, like for the sake of like just teaching and showing the actual modeling workflow, I'm not like going in and looking at a ton of reference stuff right now. Perhaps I would look into more reference stuff if I was just working on my own. But that isn't really the purpose of this. Lurking? Alright, Cage, enjoy that lurk. Okay. So, now that we have that, okay. Alright, so we have this. I'm going to add a cut down the middle, like so. And we're going to go into this mode, and we're going to add a few cuts vertically. And we're going to just make sure that we pull the blade down to be the center. I should have made this a little bit longer. Mistake. But it's a mistake that we can still fix. I'm going to set this height to 6. More. 7? 4? 8. Oh, that's depth. I see. Now I see where my confusion was coming in. Like, why is it not changing height? That's not right. All right, there we go. Wow, 155 centimeters long. Big sword. Okay, so now that I have that, I can go into I can go back into symmetry mode now in the x-axis, and we're just going to line this up with the edges of the blade. I'm going to add another cut in here. I'm just going to go all the way down. I'll add more cuts where there is more plane breaks happening. So if there's less changing, I'll have a fewer cuts. That way I can get a cleaner line, right? And we'll pull all this all the way in. Pull this down. So. Okay. And clearly we're going to need a few more cuts here. Probably going to put 3 in total. Okay. There we go. And that looks pretty good. The next step, hold on a second. All right. Yeah. Okay. So next step will be to add this kind of trimming. So to do that, I'm going to just select all these faces like so. That'll do the trick. We're going to just extrude it inwards and use the scale tool here. Right? It doesn't have to be perfect. I'll fix it up afterwards. Just get something that's fairly reasonably close. You know what? Actually, I take it back. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the scale tool, center of the scale tool, and just scale it inwards. Hold on. Okay. Sometimes it does that where it'll just deselect. If you have symmetry on and you're trying to scale an object after it's been extruded, sometimes it'll not, like the selection will get lost a little bit, which is fine. You just got to reselect them. I probably could have turned symmetry off and it would have worked as well. Okay, and then I'm going to just take all of this away. I'm going to scale this up to kind of taper the end. Or like scale it down in the y-axis is what I meant by up. We're just going to line all this stuff up again. All right, and then I'm just going to take these edges, make sure everything that I want is selected, and I'll just scale it down a little bit. I never make it perfectly thin. I like to have a little bit of an edging, because otherwise you get this really terrible shading on the edge, and I'm not a big fan. The low poly will probably have a bevel on this outer edge, just to light better. I'm probably going to thin this whole sword out a little bit more too. Mainly just because it has that kind of decal on top and I want to have space for it. That's why it's good that I've made this a little bit deeper and wider. I'm actually considering taking this top part and making it not quite as wide. And the reason for that is just because I want it to kind of line up with the hilt a little bit more. I'm just going to pull this out and then pull it back in. There. That feels better to me. Okay. And we're probably just going to go up until the low poly. And then the texturing portion and stuff will probably just be all done with the rest of the character when we get to that stream next week. But we will be going back into our regular scheduled episodes next week. Okay. We'll just pull that in a little bit. Now we can see this is going to be a bit of an issue because this isn't going to read at all. Make sure it's centered properly. And I've said this a lot before, where it's just like if you have something that protrudes straight out, this is not going to bake down. It doesn't read from this angle, like that edge just disappears. That's why it's always good to add a little bit of a bevel to your objects. I might even pull this out a little bit more, just for the sake of it. Because I think that this thing needs a little bit more space. Right? And now that what we're going to do is we're going to just take this edge and we're just going to bevel it out. Actually, I might just add a little bit of an edge here before I do that. Blade looks too thick. I want it to be thick though. I want the blade to be thick and chunky. That's just kind of the look I'm going for. However, this can be a little bit thinner, but I did want the hilt to be wider, sure. But again, you got to pick whatever aesthetic works for you. Oops, I made a mistake there. All right. Hold on. Okay. We'll just bevel this 1. Segments 1. Actually, do I want to bevel that edge like that? It's fine, whatever. No, it's not fine. Hold on. Okay. We're going to do 1 segment, and we're going to set this to something like 2. That might be too much. Oh, that's pretty good. Maybe a little bit less, but it actually lines up almost perfectly. That's kind of funny. Cool. Okay. And now that reads a lot better, right? Now you can see that edge nice and clear. These little patterns on the blade, I'll just do those in Substance, I think. I could do them now, but I feel like that would be a waste of time. Maybe you should make In a blood cutter. Maybe. Okay. I want to do a couple things too. I want to add a little bit of a taper to this. For stylistic reasons, it's nice if it gets a little bit wider at the bottom. Just looks prettier, right? You might not want to do this though if you have like a standard hilt width, because then it's just going to cause problems. But because I don't, I can get away with that, right? There. It's subtle, but it's there. I probably even, honestly, I probably shouldn't have done that just yet. I probably should have waited to do that after I make like the wraps, right? And then I just taper it with a lattice. And I'll probably still will do that, but at least I get a visual aesthetic. I don't know how I became a Twitch art stand, but I think I became a Twitch art stand. Well, nothing wrong with that. Cool stuff, thanks, dude. Lowers my blood pressure. I'm glad. It's definitely we're not one of those super in high energy streams. much chiller here. Maya, Ghost Shadow. Hey, yes. How you doing? Okay, I'm gonna scale these to fix the overlapping. But I gotta make sure that prevent negative scale is off because it would prevent me from doing that. There we go. I'm gonna put that back on now. Generally, I like having it on, but for this specific thing, it's good to have it off. Underappreciated form of entertainment. I don't know. Seems most folks like to have the higher energy stuff. Let's pull that in. Is this for a specific game? No, I'm hosting a workshop on my stream here. This is we're doing a prop session, but we've been creating a character from design to modeling, and we're gonna go into even rigging and animation soon. You can check the VODs there to see like all the past recordings, and yeah, so we'll be doing rigging, animation, and then implementation into a game. Well, a game engine. It won't be an actual real game, but. If I had free time, I'd love to follow along. Free time is hard. I wouldn't stress out over it. Those VODs will be there. Those VODs aren't going anywhere. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add, I'm going to put a bunch of slices through this to make our wrap, and then we'll just extrude it and whatnot. Work in tech, weekends or luxuries? I don't know. I'm not a fan of that in any way. Like that, it sounds like you have to do a lot of weekend work, which is just not fair. How long have you worked with Maya? I've been using Maya for about a decade. Tech equals toxic for life? Maybe you should get out of there. I don't know. I don't think any job should be that way. What's the point? Pay? What are you going to do with the money if you have no free time? I mean, if you enjoy doing it, that's different, but I don't know. Just bad point? That's fair. Yeah, you gotta do what works for you, right? So like, I don't want to say like never do this or never do this, but I wouldn't. It's not worth it for me. Okay, so to make this wrap, what I'm just doing is I'm just going through the whole thing and I'm just pulling in and scaling out different parts of this. Just so that they overlap. I'm not doing like an actual thing where this would actually twist around. Mainly because like I don't think that that effort is worth it. But you could if you wanted to like do a coil and make it actually wrap. But I'm not doing that. And then what I have to do is make sure that there's enough overlap on these that they don't kind of buzz at the edges or create gaps, right? So I want to make sure that all these pieces overlap. There we go. Lockdown was super bad. Protect people. Fair. Yeah, I get that feeling where like if you're working from home, you're always working, but I don't know. I think you can cut it off. Really cool of you for making the character creation workshop. Well, I'm glad. Been seeing your stuff for a while, and actually, what made me get into rigging. Oh, nice. Well, I'm glad I could inspire you. Run as a software QA team. Would that affect the geometry at all? Would what affect the geometry? So is 3D design your profession, passion, or both? Both. Doing the handle like that. What do you mean by affect the geometry? This is all going to get baked to a single object at the end, if that's what you're wondering. I'm going to bring this into Zbrush for sculpting, and it's all going to get baked down. Yeah. That is the plan, as it were. Awesome. I'm glad you think it's awesome. So I'm just pouring myself a little bit of water. All right. So this looks pretty good to me. I'm thinking to myself whether I want to bevel this here or use creasing in ZBrush. Part of me is thinking of using creasing in ZBrush because this is a simple shape. But we'll see. We'll see. At the very least, I want to make sure that it has enough subdivision levels to actually hold up. Or be able to be sculpted on, I should say. It has a little gem in the middle. I could probably have made this a separate piece, but I don't. I think making it one piece is suitable in this case. That'll do. And again, I'm probably going to use some creasing on this. I'm going to put a cut down the middle there. So that pretty much has all the parts that I need, aside from this little piece that sticks off to the side. So we'll make that. And then we'll throw this into the ZBrush for sculpting. Zafiro Worlds is now following. They're following. Much appreciated, my friend. No music? Not today, Spiffy Mug, because I'm doing a workshop, and I want to put these up on YouTube, so I don't want to have any music because I don't want it to get DMCA stricken. But once we're done with the workshop stuff, I'll put the music back on. Now I have this sticking out to the side, but I almost feel like I want it to stick out to the back. And I think that that would make more sense. And then have it bend around on the corner. Because it would just stick out to the side. That's what I'm gonna do. There we go. I think that'll do. There's going to be 2 of these. The other one I'm going to just angle slightly, just so that it has a little bit of an offset. Cool. And I feel like I want to break this up a little bit so that it looks more like a knot. Another thing I might do here is add a little bit of an extrusion, like so. I want it to look like it's mounted somehow. I'm going to extend this a little bit. Cool. I think that'll do the trick. I'll just shove this in there a little bit. There. I think that's pretty neat. And now that we have that going for us, I'm going to save this up, and we're going to throw it into ZBrush. I'm just going to group that into a folder. Oh, one other thing is I want to make sure that the polygons are relatively square. And the reasoning for this is, hold on, I'm going to create a duplicate of this, because I'm going to need the other one eventually as well. I'm going to create a duplicate, and then I'm going to make the polygon square. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard to sculpt on it, because you're going to have areas that have less ability for detail, or less capability for detail than others. Okay. Okay, we'll export that now. Actually, before we do, one more thing I want to do is I want to just test this in the character's hand and see how it feels. It's probably going to be a very thick hilt. Ooh, yeah. That might not be might not be holdable. It might be a little too thick. Might have to tone that down a little. All right, well, let's figure out what thickness we need it to be. Right now it's 0.91. I'm thinking, I mean, that's completely ridiculous. Look at this freaking thing. It's ridiculous, but that's kind of what I'm going for, so there you have it. I might just do something like that as well. Just trying to make it feel a little bit reasonable in her hand. I think that's a lot better. If I can make this a little bit thicker, I will. I think I'll make it a little bit thicker. And this can be shrunk down a little bit as well. Perfect. I think that'll do. I think that'll look nice. These workshops have really propped up my character workflow. Great. Har har. Okay. I'm just wondering if maybe this part I want to be a little bit wider. There. I think that feels a little better. Cool, I dig it. All right, now we're ready to go to Zbrush. Oh, wait. There's always something else. I just want to pull these in. There. Cool. Then I'm going to go into Zbrush and I'm going to be like, but wait, there's more. Okay. We're just going to go to the sculpt folder. I'm going to save this as temp. You know what? Before I do that, but wait, there's more. I'm going to name these so that they're just named in Zbrush, right? So this is going to be Hilt, Hilt top, tie 01, tie 02, not one, guard, and this is the blade, and blade decal. Oops. Now I think everything that is visible should be named now. Nope. What's this piece? Oh. Not wrap. Yeah. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go File, Export Selection, Mesh, no, Sculpt, Temp. Yep. Save that. I'm going to hide my screen for a little bit while I make sure that I open the right stuff. Okay. So I'm just going to open up the temp FBX. And we're going to import it. Ooh, I realized I made a mistake though. I'm going to have to re-export that. For a good reason, I think. I can maybe get away with this, but I'm pretty sure that my symmetry is going to be borked now. Yeah. And the reason for that so the X symmetry is fine, but because of this protrusion, my Z symmetry is going to be off. Right? Yeah, see, the symmetry is off. I could use local symmetry and get away with it, but I'd rather not have to do that. Let me see if I can go into these settings and adjust them. Maybe. Let me try this. No. Yeah, see, like, I hate that it does this. So what I'm going to do is, here, I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to delete all. And I'm going to go in here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a big plane at the bottom. And zero that out. Cool. And we're going to export all of this together. Okay. Back to ZBrush. Import temp. Okay. What do you mean separate it? The problem is that the symmetry line was not where I wanted it to be. But if I put a plane in there, now the symmetry line is exactly where I want it to be. See? Perfect. And the other thing too is I normally like to create a subtool just to be hidden at the top that holds the file name, because the first subtool of a Z tool will take on the name of the file. So I normally just put an object there. Normally I'll just take like the poly mesh and just shove it there, but because I have that plane in here, I might as well just use that. We'll just save it, and this is going to be sword 001. Boom. Easy, right? Just like that. And we're just going to go through all these parts, and we're going to start sculpting them out now. Right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to crease the edge. Usually auto crease does what I need it to, but I will double check to make sure. It did not. The tolerance is too high. I don't know why the tolerance is super high there. I'm curious how far this will take me. Yeah, I know. Okay. I'll have to automatically crease those edges, and that's fine. You just go like this. Crease. Boom. Up. Hold on. There. Don't want dynamic, but I want this to be in there. That looks fine. And we'll just do dynamic preview to make sure that we're creasing everything that we need to. I think that this could be creased one extra. I'll probably set it to a crease level of 2. Alright, it needs an extra edge, it looks like, because the creasing isn't doing enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add an extra edge loop on the top and bottom of this. And this is where I like to use ZModeler. Like ZModeler is good for stuff like this, where you just have to like quickly go in and make an extra edge or two. I don't like modeling things from scratch in it, obviously, but you know, for little edits, it's nice. Oh, so they were all one piece? No. Because I imported an FBX, they come in separate. And that's also why I wanted to name them in Maya, because now they inherited all the same names. That what I'm doing now with some jewelry is why I'm suffering so much trying to get good shapes. Because I'm doing ZModeler? Oh, I see. Why? I mean, like, Yuzo works for you, but I find ZModeler is a little bit clunky. Okay. So that'll do. I'm going to store my morph target again because the geometry changed. We'll just dynamic visibility. You know, is this not? It is creased, but I'm not liking that it's there. I might add an extra edge or two here just to kind of sharpen that up. There. And then, is this still a 2-level crease? No, it's not. Okay. Well, now that edge is very sharp. Which I guess is okay. We're going to be going in and we're going to be like hacking up the edge a little bit anyway. Now, there's a little bit of a weird beveling going on there. Or a weird crease, I should say. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to go into our crease tool. I'm just going to uncrease that edge. Excuse me. Oh. There we go. Great. We're going to store more art. Yeah, we're going to store more target again, just because. We're going to apply our dynamic subdivision model. Maybe add another cut or two. And we're just going to go into the sculpt tool now. We're going to be doing this for every piece. So maybe I shouldn't show the whole thing. But we're going to go into symmetry mode. And I'm going to turn symmetry on in both axes. And we're just going to go in, we're just going to like ding up the edge a little bit, right? So just make it so that it's not perfect. I should be using my lighter smooth brush. Maybe I'll go in with the age polish actually instead of the clay buildup. I'm just going to go in there and I'm just kind of like damaging the edge a little. I might be overdoing it. I think I am. Hold on, let's backtrack a little. This is supposed to be very, very subtle. Alright, so we just want to like get that really tiny brush and just like, I don't even think that this part of the blade is a good place to mess up a little bit with this, because the plane break is so small. You're going to get this kind of, you're going to end up planing away the edge completely, which is not what we want. This works best for like edges that have a big break on the side. But you can see that I've just kind of made it so that the edge has a little bit of texture to it. Even on stylized characters, I like to do this, unless I'm going for something really, really graphic, right? So sometimes you're going for like these really specific graphic shapes. Maybe you're not going to do this, but usually I like to break it up a little bit. If I'm not going for something that's you know, super crisp. Let me just pop open Blender. Yeah, that might be better. I've been fiddling with it for the duration of when you started stream. Oh, I see. Hey, Sylvie. Yeah, we're doing some props. Cool. I think I want to bring back some of that edge. And I like sculpting a little bit of the edge here and letting things be a little bit messier, because it just makes it feel a little bit more organic. And then what I'm actually going to do, now that I've broken up the edge, is I'm going to go in with asymmetry and add in a little bit of another layer of breakup and damage and little cuts and stuff. This way it doesn't feel too, you know, if I started dinging stuff up on symmetry mode, you'd start getting this really redundant feel, and it wouldn't look very good. I'm going to divide it another time too, maybe 2 more. That'll do. I'm just going to add some little cuts and scratches. You could probably do this in Substance too, but I like doing this in ZBrush because then you can get it into your ambient occlusion bakes and stuff like that very easily. You can do that in Substance too, but it's a little bit more tricky. And also, I feel that adding little cuts and stuff in Substance never quite feels as organic, because like here you can get this kind of interesting up and down edge where like parts of it bulge and parts of it go in, whereas Substance is very clearly procedural and very clean. You lose a little bit, I find. So smooth, I love it. Well, I'm glad. I haven't touched 3D art before, so this is heaps cool. Well, I'm glad you're finding it cool. We've been doing this workshop for several weeks now. We did a whole bunch of character stuff and conceptual stuff, and now we're here. We'll be doing texturing next week, which will be fun. I just gotta bake out all the maps before that stream, just because I don't want to. I can't bake stuff on stream, obviously, because one, it's just gonna tank the stream, and two, even if it did, you have to wait for like a good few minutes for it to bake. Do you normally stream around this time? Yes, I do. However, on weekends, I stagger them. So like this weekend is on Saturday, but next weekend would be Sunday at the same time, and I go back and forth each weekend. Other than that, my regular times are on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. PDT. No wonder I haven't been able to pop in before. It's almost 4 a.m. here. Jeez. Well, my week streams would probably be better then. Hey, Vault, welcome in. How are you doing, my friend? I'm making a sword. Look, it's a sword. I want to add a little bit more of a very specific thing. Like stuff like this, obviously you don't want to do on both sides. But I do like adding like a little bit of, dents and damage. I might just even break up the actual surface here with some little indentations and whatnot. There. My schedule is stuffed from tunneling on my games, so I've been able to catch so many more streams. That's nice. But also, I hope you don't get sick from messing up your sleep schedule. Oh, you're from Australia. Australia is a very, very nice place. Looks so clean. Thanks, Vault. So far, so good. If you want to share your game with us, I'd love to have a look at it. Of course, I'll look after after I'm done with the workshop stuff, but I can open it another tab and then pull it up afterwards. Whoa, Super Belly Jelly. Thank you for the raid. How's your stream? Welcome in. Alright, so now we're going to just break up the edge on this one too. Hardly shares updates. Well, you should change that. If you don't share updates, so no one will know your game is there. Stream went well. Was sculpting Basin from Shaman King. Nice. I'd love to have a look at it. I can't share it on stream right now, because I am recording this for YouTube. But as soon as I'm done the workshop stuff, I would be happy to show it on stream if you want to share a link. I'll share updates on Twitter soon. All right. Did it? No, it did. Okay. Yeah, I've been doing a little workshop over the last few weeks where I've been creating a character. This week we're going over props. And this one shouldn't take too long. I imagine that'll be done within an hour or two. Probably less. I'm pretty much done now. We just have to do the low poly after I'm done with the sculpting portion. And you could go in, obviously, you could go in and put a lot more detail and time into your props than I am. Depends on what you want, right? I'm not going too crazy. But you could definitely go a lot crazier. I can't go too crazy, of course, because like I want this to be, you know, reasonably length to watch and go over, and I have to be able to, you know, keep up with the schedule. But if I had like infinite time, I just, you know, I could go in and spend a couple of days on just the prop, right? But overall, I think this is pretty good. Right, we're going to crease this up. I'm going to save too. I don't believe I've saved in a little bit. Nope. Too much. I'm trying to find a good balance of crease level. No, okay. That's about the limits. So I'm going to have to crease the rest by hand. Hey Ike, welcome in. Yeah, no, that's good. Then we're going to go into transform. We're going to go in the z-axis as well. And we'll just go to dynamic mode, see how that looks. So we're going to go up a few subdivision levels. Yeah, cool. That'll do the trick. How's your character coming along, Ike? All right. What time is it now? Okay, it's almost 11. So I think I'm just going to do a couple more things on this. We'll probably do the wrap as well. But I do want to go in and I want to like just tackle the actual like low poly sculpt or low poly geometry. Maybe quick UVs. All right. I might embellish this outer edge a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is go into asymmetry mode, and I'm going to add all that extra little damage and stuff, just to make it a little bit more interesting. All right. Adorable pixel stuff, you say? Oh no. Facility's keeping all their work hidden from us. All their cute pixel work. Cool. That'll do. Then we're going to get into the wrap area. And if I wanted to too, I could have like gone in here and added a whole bunch of little details and stuff on the blade. I'm probably going to do that kind of stuff in Substance. I might add like little things on the hilt here, make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, I'll do that in Substance. Like any indentations and stuff. But here, we're going to do the wrap preset. We're going to store morph target. We're going to set this to a subdivision of 1. We're going to auto group this. Okay. And we're going to just divide it a couple times. All right. And I usually start with all the outer wrap stuff. I just want to like make it feel like things are wrapped on top of each other. So I'm just kind of inflating this edge as if it's kind of like bulged over top. I'm probably going to also want to make it so that it feels a little bit pinched on this outer edge. And again, this isn't realistic, obviously, right? It's just making it feel like it's wrapping around when clearly it's not. But that's just kind of what I'm going for. A little bit too high subdivision level. Good to make sure that you're not at too high a level. If you start seeing that when you smooth something out, the details are just like nothing's happening, you're probably at too high a subdivision level. I might go in here and just add a few little nicks and stuff. This is also why it's good that I added a little bit more overlap. I probably should have added more than I did, even thinking about it now, because I can't go too high or else there's going to be nothing underneath. a little bit of a mistake on my part. But that's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Especially me. Alright. We got that. That's going to go through all of them, same kind of way. Oops, I forgot to turn on backface masking. This is probably all messed up now, but oh well. Hopefully it doesn't cause baking issues. It might. If it does, I'll just fix it. I'll have it all baked out by next stream to make sure that there's no issues like that. Well, I think that's pretty good. Work on this one now. And maybe I should just like hop off of this and just go straight into the low poly. I'd just be carrying on like this for the rest of the model, right? Doing the same technique on all the other parts. What do you guys think? Is there anything else specific that you want to see from this? If not, I'll just hop on to doing the low poly and the UVs. That's pretty explanatory, yeah. Do you have any fancy tricks to show? Other than what I've shown, no, not really, no. Like nothing comes up that I can think of. It'll just be kind of the same stuff up until the end. I'm just gonna be going through all the parts and then just cleaning them up. Yeah. And I'll do the rest off stream, I think. But this is pretty much it. And I'll just do the same thing on these top parts. Yeah, not too shabby, right? Okay, so. All right, next thing. So now that I have this, I'm gonna use this as a base to create my low poly. So gr sword low. And I'm gonna go a little bit higher than some might, right? Depending on what the project is, right? And what your platform is and all that stuff, right? So the big thing is I'm gonna just delete this. That's never seen. We don't need this. I might add a bevel to this edge. Right. Obviously not that intense. That's a little something. Just to kind of make it so that it's a little bit cleaner on the silhouette. I'm thinking about it, and you know what? No, I take it back. That's not worth a bevel. It wasn't enough of a break in the silhouette to be worth it. And it's probably better that it's sharp like this. What else do we not need? We do not need these edges. This one is worth keeping as a bevel. I'm going to keep this as a supporting edge because it'll just bake better if I do. Otherwise, you're going to get this kind of weird shadowing. You can already see a little bit of this dark shadowing. It'd be a lot worse if I didn't have that. However, what I might do is get rid of the upper part. So I might do this. Yeah. And the reason for that is because I was getting this big pinch that was going up the blade in the base mesh, and the normal map would have to fight that. And I'd rather avoid any like lighting fighting because it's just going to cause artifacts. As for you, we don't need any of these edges really. That can all go away. I don't think I even need this one. Similarly, we could probably just merge these guys together. And I'm just going to take these guys. I'm going to pull this up a little bit, flatten it out. All right, I'm just going to delete the top because again, that's not seen either. And I don't really need this edge either. There we go. I might add a cut here, and the reason I'm going to put a cut here is so that I can split it in the UVs. That's the only reason why that would have a cut there. It doesn't really need it for anything else. Similarly, I think this guy doesn't really need a cut down the middle either anymore. Yeah. There we go. This one I'm gonna add a nice little bevel to it. It's a big piece, big chunky piece of metal, and I do want to make sure that it reads pretty well. I'm gonna get rid of any of the excess that we don't need, however. I'm also gonna reduce this maybe. I think this is too dense. I think this could be reduced. Oh wait, this is gonna be a problem because it's not. That's not worth it. No, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna leave it. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is add a little bit of a bevel to the upper edges. I actually want to put in, get back to symmetry mode. Oops. I'm contemplating that. This definitely needs a bevel. I might bevel this and then I might get rid of it after, we'll see. This needs, that doesn't need a bevel. There's not enough of a plane break for that to require a bevel. And we'll just bevel that. We go into our channel box, bevel, set that to 1. I'm gonna give it a nice, like, I don't know, a nice hefty bevel. Maybe not that much, but you know, enough. There we go. Have a look at that. That looks pretty good. If I soften it, it's pretty nice. I'm on the fence about adding a supporting edge here. Just because I think that it'll just shade better. Like this one I think needs the edge support. And again, like if you don't have the polygon budget to include these things, then don't. But if because this isn't for a specific game, I can add this just to make it look a little bit nicer. But you can see like I've already kind of emphasized that crease. The normal map will emphasize that or embellish it, but it doesn't have to like create this like it doesn't have to really force it. And the less a normal map has to do, the better your model is going to look at the end. This one has like a similar issue here where like the normal map has to put in that crease. However, it wasn't creating that same kind of noise that this was, right? This is kind of like creating like a noise over a very wide surface. This kind of like gradient that the normal map would have to fight against. Next, there's the hilt. Like I said before, this is all going to be one piece. And that's why I have the cylinder saved, right? So we can just take it and use that. We don't need the top or bottom either because it's going to be just jammed into other geo. Cool. This guy, I think I'll just bake in this whole little gem piece in the center. So we'll just delete that. I'm just going to merge that to center. Yeah. I'm thinking that this little piece here is going to remain separate. I'll just bake it. I think that's what I'm going to do. This I'm going to merge into one piece, I think. These guys can stay as they are. I will probably delete the little face on the inside here. And this edge is here just because I'm going to add a joint here. So that way we can, if once it's rigged, we can then bend it how we wanted before, where it was sticking out to the side. Whoops, symmetry's on. But anyway, like have it sticking out straight this way. It's always interesting to see how others people work in Maya. It is, yeah, it's interesting to see what other people's workflows are. So I really do hope folks are benefiting from this this little workshop thing. Okay, so the last thing is just taking these guys. I'm actually going to subdivide them once to make them kind of the right shape. I'm just going to subdivide them once, apply. All right, and we're going to do something crazy here. We're going to use a boolean. Booleans are always sketchy. Use them at your own risk. But we're going to do it. But first we're going to actually get rid of any extra edges we don't need, because the more edges we have, the more pain we're going to be in. So I like to do that before we union them. Mesh booleans union. Cool. So it creates this disaster. And I'm just going to freaking merge everything that I feel can be together. But this isn't going to be a silhouette break at all, so I can just merge all that together. I don't care, you know, stuff like that. Don't need those. I know there's a ton of n-gons. I'll fix those. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm sure some real artists out there are going to be cringing. They'll be like, "What the hell are you doing?" But you know what? This is my stream. I think it was smart. Well, I'm glad. Booleans are always like a very, very sketchy tool that generally people will avoid. I almost never use them unless I think it can give me what I want faster. Yeah, exactly. And I just want, all I want is like a piece that, I want this to be one piece because it doesn't need to be two pieces. It's this tiny little thing. In fact, I could probably get rid of a lot more. I could probably just take these guys and just freaking merge them together like that. That's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get rid of this edge, I don't need it. Doesn't do much for the silhouette at all. This one kind of does, I'm gonna leave it. I could get away with not having it, but whatever. This is also gonna be occluded, so I'm just gonna merge these guys. Okay. And what I like to do when I'm using a Boolean is I like to use the preview smooth. The preview smooth, it'll give you a warning if you have anything that's non-manifold. So it's a quick way to find out if you just have like this really screwed up piece of geometry. But this looks fine. Looks fine. So I think that'll be good. There. We got a little knot geometry. And we're all set. We got everything. Now all we have to do is UV it. And then we're done. And texturing will be all next week. But if it turns out to be too much of a cleanup issue, I'm like, no. Yeah, you can quickly see if it's an issue. All right. So we're gonna go into our texturing. I'm gonna use UV layout again because that's my go-to and it makes everything faster. So we're gonna run that. And we're gonna send it over. I'm just going to cut that. Why did it do that? There we go. I realized that I haven't really gone into explaining like how UV layout works. Maybe I should have done that. But essentially, if you hit like space, middle mouse, you can move around any object that you have. If you hit Shift C, it'll assign an edge to be cut, and then you just hit Enter, and it'll apply the cut. Yeah. I'm realizing now though that I guess I didn't really need to cut this because I kind of want to cut it on both edges here. Likewise, if you use Control W, then it'll uncut an edge. Is interesting. Hey JD, how are you doing? I hope you're feeling better today, man. And then if you want to drop something, you hit D, and then you can just click drag, and everything that you want gets dropped to the UV canvas. I'm just going to add a cut here, drop that. Yeah, I guess the reason I didn't go into too much details about how UV layout works is because I'm more talking about I want people more to get like universal things out of it, like where do you cut a mesh? How do you lay things out and all that stuff, right? As opposed to saying like, oh, how do I use this specific tool? Because you can get that information anywhere, and it's kind of useless. I'm going to cut this where it's occluded, right? So because it's hidden behind this knot, the place to cut it would be here. Just cut it like that. And then we're just going to frame that. Where's my frame button? There we go. So these outer edges are probably going to cut like this. And then we're going to add a little seam down the bottom. Actually, we're going to put it in the back because you can't see the back. and we're just going to cut it. You'll notice I hit, or you probably heard me hit enter twice. That's because one cut separated this from the other two pieces, and then the second cut did the slice on that mesh. Doing okay. I spent some time last night watching the new Adventure Time Obsidian episodes. They're like 1 hour each, and it showcases characters. There's 4 total, but 3 are out right now. I ugly cried over some of the scenes, seeing all the characters and lore. It was therapeutic. I also got some more sleuth work in, and Union Gray helped me tweak my merch art. Oh, that's awesome! So keeping up the grind? Yeah. Oh, that's great. And I never finished Adventure Time. I always wanted to, but I never had time to watch the last few seasons. Now it's been so long that if I wanted to watch it, I'd have to start over. I'd love to see how the merch art is coming along. You'll show? Awesome. This shouldn't take too long. All right. Yeah. I didn't need that edge in the middle like I thought I would, so I'll probably just delete it. I was thinking I would cut it down the middle and then have it both sides, but I changed my mind. As you do, right? That'll happen. I may get back to using this instead of Blender's UV tools because I hate Blender's UV tools. I actually kind of liked Blender's UV tools. Well, at least I like them better than Maya's UV tools. I hear the new Maya is better, but again, I have no intention of getting a subscription when I have a perpetual license. Maybe in the future, but right now, no. I guess it depends if I go and I do, if I go and do freelance again. And awesome, thanks JD. I'll have a look at right after I'm done with this workshop stuff. I'm gonna open those up in a new tab. I want to share them with everyone, but I don't want to like pull it up while I have the because this is going to go up on YouTube. Yeah. And I don't feel right showing other people's art in my videos. So like, hey, look at this art. It's totally not mine, but okay, I'm gonna send this to Maya. And we're just gonna quickly, oh no. Maya did that thing that I hate. Thanks for not transferring the files over. Okay, that's actually good that this happened because now I can kind of show my workaround. Uh-oh. There we go. So if I just undo one when it does the transfer, it keeps the original meshes that it tried to copy, right? So these ones have the UVs on them, but it wasn't able to copy them to the original. And if I really wanted to, and I could probably just use these, but I don't want to do that. I like using my original meshes because I feel for some reason that they're cleaner. Also, when things get imported, they get imported slightly offset. I'm not really sure why that is, but they're usually off by like a unit or two. So what I tend to do is just take that and I'll just snap it in place, make sure it fits. And then I'll just take the sword and just copy it over, and it'll go Windows, sorry, mesh, edit mesh, sorry, mesh transfer attributes. I know what I'm doing. Current UV set, I'm gonna do world space because there's some issue that was making it so they didn't transfer, right? Hilt. So the hilt is there, and then the hilt top. Apply, and I just go through all the pieces like this. What is this? Hold on. Oh, that's why it's screwed up. Okay. I know why it's screwed up now. It's because there's multiple files or multiple parts in here that share the same name. Right? Blade, hilt, hilt top, they're the same. And I think it got confused. That's okay. Cool. And now I'll just delete the history. We'll delete that. Good. And I'll create one more duplicate. I like to keep the original UVs before I lay them out in case I met. Uh-oh. I didn't copy one. Hold on. Oh, I never unwrapped this. Oops. It's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It's fine. Go back. We're going to go back to UV layout. I missed a piece. Okay. Perpetual license? Yeah, Maya used to have perpetual licenses, and I bought the last one you could get, which was Maya 2016. Now it's all subscription. Oof. It's not that big of an oof. Just a little oof. And does this workshop include rigging? It will include some light rigging. Very beginner level rigging. Enough to get you rolling. Haven't caught a stream in weeks. The workshop is new to me. Oh, then it has been a while. I've been doing this workshop for almost 2 months now. It takes a very, very long time. Oops. There we go. Cool. See, no biggie. We're all good. No worries. There we go. Cool. I like to have my mic just disconnected. I don't know what the last thing I said, but I was just talking about having the UV straightened out a lot because it makes it easier to pack if it's all like square. Despite not diving into 3D at all yet, it's really fun watching this workflow. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'm osmosing the knowledge for future familiarity. Well, I'm glad. The VODs will be up as well, so you can always refer back to them. And I'm always around too. Like if anyone is like going through these later and wanted to ask something about something specific, you know, just ping me. I'm around. Not to worry. I work in 3D, but it's always fun seeing someone else's workflow pipeline. Yeah. How much for was it? Was like 4K. It wasn't cheap. It was very expensive. All right, now we're all set. I'm gonna send it again. Okay, and obviously it didn't transfer properly as we expect. And that's okay. We'll just do that one manually. And that's the guard. And we'll just copy that over like before. Oh wait, not quite. We gotta reposition this again. There we go. And we'll do that one more time. The difference is negligible, but I'm a very paranoid person. All right, cool. And then this is going to be the knot. And we're all set. And then I'm going to duplicate this again, and we're going to lay it out. Okay. It seems like chat is a hella lag for you, by the way. Is it? No, I think it's just taking me a while to get to things. What does UV layout do that the UV editor does not? It just gives you way more tools to work with, and it just does them very quickly. So like all the slicing tools, the tools for pinning and straightening out edges. It's just very, very powerful. Also, their unwrapping algorithm is pretty good, for sure. But I can chat with you and hang with peeps here, so I can do both. It's true. It is true. Makes UVs easier to work with. I wish Blender's grid flattening tool UV editor was more noticeable. It works like freaking charm, but it's a little secret tool for someone for some reason. Yeah. Hey, Toasty, how are you doing? Yeah, it has been a minute. What are you up to? Are you going to be done after the UVs? Yes, and then we're going to go to our regular scheduled streaming. Paranoid stuff, that's right. Gotta focus up, yeah, man. Well, you have to think. Like, I would look at the chat more if I wasn't recording this, but I have to think too. Like if this is going up on YouTube, that people aren't gonna want to like sit and watch me just chatting, right? But don't worry, we'll be vibing a little bit more shortly. I might fit this into just a vertical texture. I think that this only needs that. So I'm gonna make this use a rectangular texture map because it has a lot of vertical long pieces. And I think that I don't need the whole texture space, but we'll see. We'll see how much I can cram in here. But I think that makes sense to me because otherwise you're gonna end up with a lot of wasted texture space. That's kind of my rule of thumb. If you have a lot of vertical parts to whatever you're UV mapping, I tend to just make it a rectangular texture instead of a square texture. But you just want to make sure that it's like 0.5, right? You don't want to have some weird rectangle. You want to make sure that it's nice, clean. I always do like a 1x2 for rectangle. I might have to shrink this a little bit more. Wasn't complaining, just didn't know if you were aware. Oh, yeah. No, that's fine. No worries. Don't worry, I wasn't, there was no concerns. Or are these still instanced? Oh, they are. That's also why it causes an issue. When you transfer stuff over, if something is instanced, then it causes a problem. I think they could still share a texture. I don't think they need unique textures, so I'm probably just going to leave them that way. We'll see. I mean, I'll have space for it, so I guess I could just make them different. There we go. I'll just put these in this little space in here, and then we're done. All right. Yeah, I'll make them separate. Modify, convert instance to object. There. There we go. Okay. And the last thing I have to do now that I have these UVs done, well, actually I could probably increase the spacing here because there's a lot of empty space at the bottom. Just space it out a little bit. Like so. Okay, that's better. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to scale these out and make it square. Like that. So the reason I do that is because what Maya does, and any 3D tool does, is like it'll stretch a rectangular texture across this square space. So even if I bake a rectangular texture map, it'll stretch it across this. So you want to make sure that it fills the whole space. And it's fine to stretch out a horizontal thing like this because the texture that's applied to it will be rectangular. So it'll basically counteract each other. I do want this to be a little bit higher up. There. That's it. That's it. We're done. I took your advice and it was most satisfying, not to say company with bad environment. Now I have an interview with a more exciting company in 2 days. Oh, nice. I'm happy to hear that. Does new Maya allow texture painting? Or do you always have to export UVs? Well, you always have to make UVs. Even if you like paint on the model, it needs something to store that information on. The UV tool in Maya looks better than Blender? Ah. I say Maya user who is converting to Blender because it's free, although I have little experience in Blender's UV tools. Fair enough. UVs in Blender is great in my opinion, unfortunately only if you know every little hidden tool is. Yeah, that's the problem with Blender because it has so many layers, there's a lot of hidden stuff, right? You missed what I did? All I did was I scaled out the UVs. I have a little script. Edit. And all this does is, I think this is the right one, right? Hold on, let me make sure that I'm using the right one. I always mix them up. Yeah, okay, this is that one. And all it does is it scales the UVs in one axis by 2. See here, so this is the scale in the U, and it just doubles it. And it does it from the pivot of 1, 1, so that's this bottom right corner, so that's why it stretches out to the left. And I just do that because when you apply a rectangular texture, it'll stretch across this square space. So I need to make sure that the UVs span across that whole area. And that's it. And that's it, we're done. So there's the sword. We got like that, and we have our character like that. And we can just move them to the side, and there we go. So we're ready to go. Next week we'll be doing texturing, and then it'll be rigging and animation. Exciting stuff ahead. But I'm going to stop the recording for anyone who's watching the VOD. So I hope you learned some stuff from this little prop stream. And the rest of us will just carry on and vibe for a little bit.